if we want to understand what rules the world and how the world is ruled on the assumption that God exists, on the faith that God exists, on the theory that God exists, then we have to understand, regardless of how much human intervention there is, why in the higher worlds do specific leaders succeed in getting the approval in the higher worlds, which eventually translates into the lower worlds and has an effect on people in this world. And in order to understand that, we need to understand how a person like Obama, which was a black person, can get into office in the United States. And he wasn't so good for the United States. Economically, him and Bush together put America in such debt that was unimaginable, unfathomable. And of course, there was a small buildup of issues and problems. But the question is, how does this work and how does it translate into this world? Because once we understand how the higher worlds work and how they translate into this world, we can begin to get leverage and a deeper understanding in the world events. So we have black and we have white. White is, let's say, positive. Black is negative. Not negative as in a negative way, just okay. Black is Gevura and white would be Chesed. Chesed is kindness and Gevura is strength or restraining. Obviously, like in Chinese culture, you would explain it as the two dualities of yin and yang, and the one who controls both dynamics, he's the winner. In other words, it's not about which side you're on, it's about if you can understand both as they coexist and then cash in on both. Just like a leader, which has to cater to all his people, not only the people of his faith, or not only the people of his gender, or not only the people of his psychological build. So it's definitely someone that understands both. And in the Shemona Esrei, which is the prayer that the climax of the Jewish prayer, the first blessing that the Jews say is, "Blessed be God, which is the protector of Avraham." Magen Avraham, the guardian of Avraham. And if you're looking at the three fathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, then Avram would be Chesed, Yitzchak would be Gevura, and Yaakov would be Tiferes, which is a culmination of both. And we can see it in the way they behaved. Avram, his main contribution to society was Hachnasas Archim, which means bringing in the guest, and being a good host. So as a host, you can see the way he expressed Chesed, which is kindness. Yitzchak's main ambition was digging wells. Digging wells, today it sounds like, digging wells, is that what his deal was? But that basically means providing water and supply for the entire region. But unlike his father Avraham, when Avraham wasn't around, someone else would come and steal the well, and they weren't scared of Avraham. But Yitzchak, when he dug a well, he was such a fearsome person, not because of aggression, but he was just a fearsome person, that nobody touched his wells. And he uncovered the wells of his father, and no one touched them either. So you can see that there was this Gevura in it. Tiferes is like Jacob. And the difference between Jacob and Abraham and Isaac was that Abraham and Isaac, each of them had two children, one which went in the righteous way and one which didn't follow in the righteous way. Abraham had two children. The first child was Ishmael, which is the father of the Muslims, and the second one was Isaac, and Isaac went the righteous way, and Yishmael went not the non-righteous way. And the same thing happened with Yitzchak. He had two children, Yaakov and Esav, and Yaakov went the righteous way, and Esav went the non-righteous way. Now, Yaakov also had 12 children, and you might even say that they misbehaved sometimes. Like, you see that Yehuda and his brothers sold Yosef. So they sold their brother, and Yehuda also found a prostitute on the side of the road and had relations with her. And Yehuda's children got married to their wives, but didn't want to have any children, so they made sure that, because they wanted their wives to stay pretty, so they made sure that their wives would never enter pregnancy, and God killed them because of that, two of them. And so we see that even Jacob had children that weren't necessarily the cut of the cloth, or they weren't exactly the apple that fell close to the tree. However, despite the fact that the actual children were not behaving like Jacob would have expected, and despite the fact that he was cheated into marrying the mother of Yehuda, which is Leah, instead of Rachel. So in other words, Jacob only wanted Rachel, which was Joseph's mother and Binyamin's mother. Those were the children that Jacob wanted, and Leah brought Yehuda and some of the other children, many of the other children, and then Bilhah and Zilpah, which were the maids of both of them, brought in several children. But the point is that instead of Yaakov saying, okay, Yehuda, get out of my face, I don't want to see you anymore, you caused me anguish for 20 years for selling your brother Joseph as the leader of your brothers. Instead of doing that, Jacob basically looked at it and said, Yehuda, maybe his mother was forced into my life because her father Lavan scammed me. And maybe he's not, the best, child. However, he is very full of strength. He's very full of ambition. And I'm going to use that ambition in order to spearhead what Joseph needs to do in the world. And in modern day religious text, that would mean Moshiach ben Yosef and Moshiach ben David, the Messiah, son of Joseph, and the Messiah, son of David. The Messiah, son of Joseph, or the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which his name was Yosef Yitzchak, is the preparation for the Messiah of David, which is the Rebbe, or Mashiach ben David, or the tribe of Joseph basically prepares for Judah, for Yosef prepares for Yehuda to go in and fulfill God's desire in the world. And the reason why Yehuda gets to rule is because he's much more aggressive and he's stupider, just like a soldier is not necessarily the most intelligent, because he's going to be the meat that's going to be sacrificed for the rest of the country. So in order to really want to get into such a situation, you can't be too bright. I'm not talking about Green Berets or different branches in the army which specialize in peace and scouting the area and talking to the locals. I'm talking about the actual soldiers that go and get killed. So Yehuda, with all of his energy and with all of his ambition, was lined up by his father Jacob to be the ruler of the 12 tribes, and Yosef, which is Jacob's most loved son, he would be the one providing the intel providing the information and giving the plan to make the world a better place. And this combination works out kind of perfectly. And of course, at the end of the day, the king is in charge. But if the king's weakness is that he's not smart and he can be manipulated, quote unquote, by his advisor, then there is his weakness. And just like that is the culmination. Now let's go back to black and white. In every game, you have to have black and white. You have to have chesed and gevura. Now, the reason why we say Magen Avraham as the first blessing in the Jewish prayer is because no matter how full of strength you are, you need to have chesed, which is kindness. And another way of looking at the reason why we say Magen Avraham is because when you're too kind, you start to spill too much of the kindness, and then the wrong people can leech onto it and steal the good that is being spread out. So that's two ways of looking at why we say it. But one thing's for sure, the kindness must be there, because it's like if you don't have any matter, then you cannot create anything. The matter is the kindness, and the limitation is the restraint. But you cannot make matter out of restraint. And that's why I think that Obama failed miserably as president. Not because, obviously there's a million reasons why that could have been true and why that happened, but I'm saying that because the black is connected in the higher worlds to Gevura, not that it's a bad thing, but it's just not the Shefa element that is needed in the world. Now, of course, if Obama was listening to a white man, sounds weird, but if Obama was channeling his Gevura through a channel of Chesed, then it could have worked. But because today the way government and the role of the president is to give, it didn't work. So that's why I think Trump is doing very well. And if someone's going to ask me, well, what about Bush? He was white. So yeah, Bush was white, but his intentions weren't white. He was white like Lavan. Lavan in Hebrew means white. And there's also a kind of white which is a trickster, which is trickery, which is I'm all white, I'm all perfect, but when you dig a little deeper, you find that everything is but perfect. The Bush administration did a lot of shady things, and they still haven't answered for it, and they might need to answer for it together with Clinton and all those. So the difference between Trump and Bush would be that Trump would be chesed in a holy sphere, and in holiness itself, in a spiritual sphere, and in a spiritual sphere, he would be in a holy sphere, while Bush would be chesed, but in the Satan sphere, in the devil's sphere, in the leumase, in the other side's sphere. And we know that Bush was a part of the Skull and Bones Society, and maybe still is, and is connected to many shady things that we haven't seen Trump be part of. Trump has a healthy family. He has a wife. He has children. And the fact that he got divorced multiple times could be that, he has a few demands that his wives weren't able to keep up with, or like you see Melania say that Trump is a very punctual person, and he doesn't put up with a lot of monkey business. But the fact that he kept trying, and the fact that everything's okay now, speaks volumes. And I haven't seen a president in the White House that is so proud of his family, and his family are such an honor to the family. like President Trump. And that's a very positive thing. So we have Abraham, Isaac, and then we have Jacob, which is to intermingle both elements. Now Trump has intermingled Chesed and Gevurah very successfully in his campaign. And he's done that by being very stern, yet being all about giving. And he's stern against those who are the exact opposite, who pretend to be all giving, but that's the cover-up for their sternness. The Democratic Party would be a good example of Lavana, or the bad white, because the Democrats have promised the black community and all their voters that America would become great, but they haven't fulfilled on their promise. They use social wars, racial wars. They use all kinds of constructs of conflict in order to push an agenda, and then the whole house of cards eventually becomes clear to everyone. They change up their story every 5 minutes, and this is also one of the telltale signs of a scammer or a liar, is that he keeps on changing the terms and conditions every 5 minutes. Lavan, in the story in the Bible, changed the terms of how he's going to pay Jacob for his work 40 times. He said, I'm going to pay you all the black sheep that are born. And then when he saw that too many black sheep are born, he said, I'm going to pay you in all the brown sheep that are born. And then he kept on changing the terms of how Yaakov was going to get paid for 20 years of service, 20 years of hard work. So that is the telltale signs of a scammer. And the amount of times the Democrats have been changing up their narrative, changing up their scoop, is mind-boggling. They'll pick Hillary up, they'll throw her down. They'll pick up Oprah, they'll throw her down. They're changing socks day and night. And it's amazing how quick everyone, here's the hope, here's the dream. When everyone knows that it's just smoke and mirrors that they have to offer. It's all coming from jealousy, hate. They're just cringing and grinding their teeth. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, the success of humanity is a problem to them. Now, another thing is that, unfortunately, the black community in reality is lacking in knowledge. And those who are knowledgeable, professors or people that just study a lot, they sometimes take their knowledge for granted. When you're smart enough, you don't fall into the millions of issues that other people fall into. Just to give a quick example, if someone is knowledgeable enough about what smoking does to someone, he'll never fall into it to begin with. So that's why at a very young age, many people get addicted to smoking before they're 20, because they're not smart enough to know what it really does to a person, and they're in their revolutionary phase in life. So they'll start smoking in order to boost their self-esteem or something. But if you didn't smoke till you're 20, then you probably won't start smoking afterwards, because you hear about the health issues with it, and you're not interested in getting your lungs replaced every once in a while. Moving on, so that's just an example of knowledge is power. Teenagers are not knowledgeable enough in this realm, and therefore the fact that they're not knowledgeable enough makes them weak and vulnerable to this threat. And the more knowledge someone knows, the more power he has. Unfortunately, the public school system has been failing the black community extremely, and I wish there would be more private black public schools, and I wish there would be more private public schools. I wish there would be more private schools at a very affordable rate. And me being an ultra-Orthodox Jew, I was put in a private school for religious reasons, but it saved me the brainwashing and the manipulation that today's public schools and universities are suffering. This whole creation of these crazed social justice warriors fighting for all kinds of causes without any rationale, is very, very toxic, and it is the exact opposite of knowledge is power. It is what the communist ruling class would call useful idiots. People that are dumb enough to listen to what you need them to do, motivated enough to do it, but not smart enough to realize how they're being used to benefit a few people and to play political and economic games within a country. When George Soros paid for Antifa to riot, it was worth it for him in his mind, and he knew a way that he's going to make money out of it. The same thing is, interestingly enough, George Soros was aware, apparently, of the Las Vegas shooting, even though there's no proof of it. But the fact that he made money off the Las Vegas shooting with playing with his stocks in the right way during that whole crisis. So knowledge is something that's taken for granted, and some people say, Africa is struggling, they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have electricity, they don't have this, they don't have that. You know what they don't have? They don't have knowledge. They need to learn how to write, they need to learn how to read, they need to learn how to speak, they need to learn how to be innovative, and they need to learn how to import, they need to learn how to get along, and all this stuff is taught. Social skills are taught. The skills, of course, and that is something that they need, and the black community in general needs to know this. And I'm saying all this because I care about the black people and the white people, and we all have to know our faults and our advantages. The black people, because they gravitate towards gevura, which is restraint, they need to know that they need to seek chesed. And the white people, because they gravitate towards chesed, they need to know that they need to gravitate towards gevura. And even within the white people, let's say the Arabs compared to America, which is like the Romans, the Arabs compared to the Romans, the Arabs are much more chesed than the Romans. The Romans would be more gevura than the Arabs. And the black people are the epitome of gevura, but again, they're in their own domain, kind of, if you're going to compare the Romans to the Arabs. Yishmael was the son of Abraham, and because he was the son of Abraham, Abraham was all about chesed, and chesed is kindness. So Yishmael would be more quick to lean towards kindness, and sometimes an abundance, not so much only kindness, but more of abundance, but in a inappropriate way. And you can see that in the way that the Muslim world is fighting so much, and that is, there's on one hand you have the places in the Arab kingdom which are abundant, and you have the kings and the princes, rolling the streets, and then you have the places where there's abundance of whatever the people want, which, let's say, in the case of certain places there, wars and conflict and action. They're living the arcade life, but it's costing them their life. So there's an abundance there, and then Esau, which was the son of Isaac, has the gevura ingrained in him in a very, very strong way. But then again, in comparison to the amount of gevura that the black people have, which is the sons of Ham or Cush, they are nothing in comparison. That's why you see the blacks maintaining their own society in America, even though there are some similarities. Of course, as private people, if we want to make the world a better place, we need to be as selfless as possible. We need to be non-selfish. And this means sharing what we have with the world, the truth. And of course, everything I say here, I'm not saying because I'm trying to prove points or because I'm crazy about my religion. I'm saying it because I believe it, I'm saying it because I think so, and I'm saying it because I want and hope that it helps somebody out there in the world. In general, we can add in goodness and kindness to make the world a better place. We have to learn the 7 laws of Noah, which is a great universal staple for all mankind. And I was told that the 7 laws of Noah are official law. If all the laws, if there's martial law in America, then the 7 laws of Noah become the law. And that's actually pretty interesting. And of course, we all have to be looking for justice in the world. We all have to be seeking out the truth. And of course, our job is to embrace our truth, or the truth, and of course join all those other people which are looking for the truth. We have to slowly but surely begin to agree with each other on specific truths that we all agree on, and then move from there to crystallize the complete and total truth, which will bring peace and stability to the world. Then again, of course, I believe that, as I saw in the Rubin report, if I'm not mistaken, that it's important to discriminate against things that we don't appreciate. Just like when you don't want someone to walk into your house because you don't know him, or he's not a nice guy, so you're discriminating against him. There's nothing wrong with discrimination. There's nothing wrong with having a different opinion, as long as you have no problem with the other person living his life. In other words, live and let live. Don't tread on me. And of course, be humble and be safe. And if someone comes up to you, I also saw this great small video that basically explains how if the dominance, someone comes and says, "You're nothing," you say, "Okay, fine, I'm nothing." Okay, and and they try to get to you, and they try to invoke a reaction. Just don't give them the reaction they want. These dynamics can be, of course, applied to family life, to political life. It's just very important not to be blackmailed, and to be honest, and to always have a wide angle opinion, and to always listen to multiple wise people. I can listen to wise Christians, or wise Muslims, or wise atheists. If they have a point, then I'll admit to that point. And of course, my faith and my background is preserved to me. I'm not pushing it on to anyone. But then again, this is my culture, and I'm sure that there's the wise old Chinese man, which has a few secrets of life and remedies of life. And we have to learn from everyone and coexist truly, and not just on the bulletin board. Thank you for joining us on a whole new level. See you later.